And actually, I'm going to pick up on some of that with the Chief Rabbi, Rabbi Mirvis. Very good to see you, Chief Rabbi. I mean, these are exceptionally grim times, challenging times. How do you persuade your congregation to keep the faith when things are so grim?
Many academic studies right around the world are showing that during COVID, levels of spirituality are at an all-time high. And also many studies are showing that many people are praying now, many in their own way and some in traditional ways. And people are cleaving to faith at this time. You know, the verse from Psalm 23, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. That's something that many people actually experience right now. We feel the way in which God is carrying us through COVID. And of course, we in our Jewish tradition believe in bitachon and hishtadlut. Bitachon means my trust and belief in God. Hishtadlut is his call to us to be his partners. And I cannot recall a time ever through my life in which it hasn't been more apparent that that's the call of the hour, for us to call to God and to recognize he's calling to us, to be responsible, to look after our health and to look after the health of others, to be good citizens, to engage in self-sacrifice for the sake of our society. And the best possible example of that partnership are the vaccines that have been rolled out. Isn't it miraculous that after only 9 months, sure, we've seen these vaccines, which usually take some 10 years to develop. And we're therefore blessed to have the guidance of the Almighty at this time.
I'm going to go to the break in a minute. I've got one other thing on this theme that I want to just talk to you about. We were very fortunate only a few months before he died to have your distinguished predecessor, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, on this programme, a great man.
Yes.
And one of the small sort of crumbs of comfort he took from this crisis was he felt, and I'm sure he was right, that in many communities there was a pulling together through all of this. Now, however, we are seeing quite a lot of anger and quite a lot of finger pointing. How do you think we rediscover those virtues of community? Because I am slightly worried at the moment we're going to move to a period of fracture.
So we can look at community at local level and then community at a global level. At local level, I'm in awe of the extraordinary acts of compassion which are being carried out in so many communities within so many faith groups. The best side of people is coming to the fore during these times. At a global level, one of the greatest lessons of COVID for me is the fact that you've got COVID on the one side and all of humankind on the other. Every single human being on earth is on the same side. This surely must be the greatest lesson of the pandemic, that we shouldn't see in others somebody who is in any way inferior to ourselves, but rather we must recognize that every human being is created in the image of God, and therefore the pandemic is calling upon us to recognize the value of every single person right across the globe. Sadly, however, that hasn't always found its expression during the pandemic, and that is troubling me enormously.
Well, I'm going to come back and talk to you about all of those very troubling issues in just a moment. Please don't go away, and all of you at home, please don't go away. Will there be more from the Chief Rabbi and more from Jess and Deanna in just a minute or two. Welcome back. I'm delighted the Chief Rabbi, Rabbi Mirvis, is still with me. We were just talking about some of the more troubling things that are happening in the world, some of the divisions, some of the hate. I mean, one of the things that you have said is we, outside of China, must not simply ignore, tolerate the appalling treatment of the Uyghurs by the Chinese. But what actually should our government, other governments of democracies be doing?
So let's have a look at this in the context of today. Today is Holocaust Memorial Day, 27th of January, the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. And the Holocaust was unique, but the lessons of the Holocaust are ever relevant. And it saddens many people immensely to recognize that the cry of never again has been heard all over again. So we've seen genocides in Bosnia, Cambodia, Darfur, Rwanda. We're currently seeing the persecution of the Rohingya in Myanmar and the Uyghurs in China. And it's a time where one shouldn't look the other way. And that's why I have spoken out because I believe that leaders now do need to take a stance on this important issue, particularly bearing in mind the human tragedy suffered by the Jewish people in the past. And I believe, therefore, that we all have a personal responsibility here. Don't presume that somebody else is going to be dealing with this problem. That was what contributed in such a significant way to the Holocaust, because so many people did turn the other way. So it's something for us to cry out about, write to our MPs about, prompt the politicians to act in an appropriate way. It's a time for action.
Because, I mean, the thing that would trouble many of us is China is now so powerful and we are so dependent on Chinese goods, you know, even Chinese, I mean, it was obviously the most controversial area, but Chinese technology, that, you know, what you see is governments talking a talk, but not actually taking action that's going to change the behaviour of the Chinese government.
So in the 1980s, my wife and I were very involved in the campaign for Soviet Jewry. And that, of course, was before the dissolution of the USSR. And at that time, it seemed to be an impossible undertaking. The depth of persecution of Jews in the former Soviet Union was immense. But with fortitude, we went on with our rallies, we cried out, we appealed to politicians around the world, and eventually it helped. And there are some notable former refuseniks from the USSR who today acknowledge that it was thanks to what ordinary people did that eventually things were overturned. And I strongly believe in the power of ordinary people.
I mean, talking about the power of ordinary people, one of the things on a completely different issue that the Archbishops of Canterbury and York have said today is they're very keen to see their congregation praying for those who have died and who may be at risk in this crisis. Is that a message that you're also sending out to your flock?
Oh, absolutely. I composed a special prayer which is recited by our communities and by individuals. I composed this in March at the commencement of coronavirus, together with psalms and other special prayers which we continuously say. There are prayer rallies around the world, and our prayers are for every single human being who is suffering at this time. Absolutely.